Are you planning on bringing Tyus Jones back, and just is there a certain number in mind that you feel like you would like to bring him back at?
Yeah, so we have 3 free agents. We have Tyus, we have Kyle, we have Jarrett Culver. I think a lot to be encouraged about from each of them, this season. Not going to go into specific contractual stuff at this point, but, for what Tyus did, this season, really, playing as well as he did, both as a backup and as a starter. Tyus has always been kind of like a cultural, foundational, type of piece for our group. Kyle, the versatility that he gives us, the playmaking, I think there's a lot of encouraging stuff about both of them. I know Jarrett Culver wasn't able to show, from an opportunity standpoint as much as he'd like, but the professionalism that he had, throughout this season, staying the course, staying ready, his day-to-day work, I think there's a lot to be positive about with him too.
Terry?
Before looking forward, let's look back. What's your thoughts on the season, and what's your evaluation of the season?
I think there's a lot of encouraging progress, that we saw this season. The goal, was and is going to continue to be to win a championship, here. And I feel like we made progress towards that, this season. And that's kind of all that you can ask for in this position. I'm surrounded by, terrific people, players, coaches, staff. I think everyone's pulling in the same direction. I think, it kind of speaks for itself, the growth that we've seen, on the court, but a lot of individual development, a lot of collective, development as a group. I think it's of course, no one's satisfied, though at the same time with where we got to. We wanted to win that series, badly against Golden State. There's a lot of collective belief that, going forward, we're going to put ourselves in a position where, we want to be able to get all the way, through the playoffs. And the learning experience, from last year having made the playoffs and putting up a little bit of a fight against Utah, getting one game, but then, not quite as much over the rest of that series to, winning our first playoff series, in this group. I think that's a real accomplishment. We had to dig deep. We had to find a way. We had to adjust. We had to adjust again, to find a way to beat a really talented, Minnesota team. And then to go into, to play Golden State, to have the game 5 that we did at home. I think, we're going to learn from, we have to take our, the games at home, in a series. We have to, take advantage when there's that thin margin, in a playoff series in a game 4, on the road. Like we're going to learn from that. We're going to get better, from that. So I'm very glad that we had that experience, even though there's a bitter taste coming out of it.
We'll go Drew, Jarvis, Mark.
As far as jaw goes, bone bruise can mean a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
The timeline can be various. Is there any more clarity you can give us as far as what comes next for him and just how long it might take him to get back to 100%?
Yeah, so Jaw's going to be just fine. But bone bruise is accurate. Non-surgical is accurate. There is not like a procedure or a scope or anything like that that's involved. It's rest, it's offload, it's recover, it's ramp back up, it's have a great off season. There will be a full recovery well ahead of next season. Jaw will be in a great place for next year.
Jarvis.
Zach, right here. Right here.
Yeah.
So speaking of Ja and going forward, how much is his injury in the last few games of the playoffs and how the team played? You were shorthanded. Does that play way into how you look at how you want to reorganize or make any kind of moves going forward?
I think it just speaks volumes about guys like Tyus, who time and time again have been able to step up when the number is called in a more expanded role. I'm incredibly impressed by how we've been able to keep playing at the level that we're trying to hold ourselves to, regardless of who's on the floor on a given night. But we're at our very best when Ja is out there, and he'll be back healthy, and we can't wait for that to hit the ground running. Hopefully full group off season out of the gate, and it was a special year this year, but we intend to build on it and hopefully have an even more special year next season.
Just to follow up real quick, do you kind of wish you could see what it would be like if 12 had gone on the floor those last few?
Absolutely. I think you see it, especially, the late in game moments, Ja time and time again. I think if you play out, the end of game 1, Ja hits that, way up 9 times out of 10. We happen to get the 1 out of 10 that it went the wrong way. Ja has consistently, executed at an efficient and incredibly impressive level in those situations. One of, many places where Ja provides incredible value, to what we're doing, but we miss Ja a lot.
We'll go go Mark, then Pete.
Zach, two questions. One about Ja. Do you anticipate signing him to the most lucrative contract this franchise has ever had before?
Now, well, I'm of course not allowed to say specifics on that. Whatever I'm allowed to say under the NBA rules without violating the CBA, I hereby say about our what our plans would be for Ja. He's of course a cornerstone here.
You've grown this thing organically over the last 3 years. Does the fact that this team appears pretty darn close to being a title contender change your approach at all this offseason?
Yeah, so again, the goal is and continues to be to win the championship here. The decision making, North Star is going to continue to be what's going to maximize, our chances of doing so, while building in a sustainable way, and I'm excited, to see what if any, are the opportunities to, try to make us better. We're never going to do something just to do something. We're not going to do anything flashy for the sake of being flashy, but we're going to look at everything that might be on the table, and we're going to try to use common sense at the end of the day to say what's going to, increase our likelihood of getting us to that point that I believe we're going to be able to get to.
We'll go Pete, then Mike Wallace.
Zach, I want to go back to what you said about Tyus and culture, because the culture has been so strong here. When you evaluate a player, whether that is through the draft or free agency or via a trade acquisition, how important is it to evaluate that player in terms of how they will fit into this culture? Because obviously you want basketball IQ, you want basketball ability. How important is it to look at player A and say, okay, that guy fits our culture, player B might not?
It's very important. It's critically important. It's a significant part of our process. We believe and we're very protective, of our culture. We want to bring in individuals, and that's players, that's coaches, that's staff, who believe in, who buy into, our culture and support it. I think, that's important. It's going to continue to be.
Mike Wallace.
Zach, for 2 years you've consistently talked about the championship North Star. And when you said that 2 years ago, were you as confident that you would get to this point this quickly? And what do you see as the next set of needs to get you to the next step from here?
Even at that point, I was confident, I was hopeful, that if we, bought into and were exacting in and kind of were disciplined in our approach, our process, our way of team building, I was hopeful. It's great that, here we are, and I think there's a very clear proof of concept, of what we're building. I think there's an internal and external, kind of belief and buy into that there's something about, the way that we're operating here. But we're thrilled to be at a point now, and we're not taking anything for granted, right? Like that, you never know how long a window, may be, but we're going to optimize it as much as we can, and we're going to do everything we can to win a title and hope, build on it from there.
Parker, then Chris.
Zach, so this summer you'll have $20 million in cap space. In the past 3 off seasons, we've seen you use that to maybe take on a little bit more money to acquire an asset or move up in the draft. Does the successes of the season kind of change the calculus of how you operate with that cap space?
I think really like we've viewed, other off seasons. It's where can we be, opportunistic to find, value to build out our roster further. The cap space numbers get thrown around. That doesn't include like, first round pick, cap holds. Like I wouldn't rule anything out, but I wouldn't also assume we're gonna do some splashy thing, with that at the same time. But we're gonna take, what we have available to us. We have a lot of draft assets. Are there opportunities that we have to, make ourselves, better within what we believe is a window of contention. I'm excited to see what opportunities there are. I don't know what sitting here today, I couldn't tell you, this is, even what I believe, to be available. But we're excited to work through that process and work and do everything we can to make this team even better.
Chris.
Is it still the organization's conclusion that Ja's current knee injury is unrelated? Current right knee injury is unrelated to the right knee injury he had late in the regular season, and then on top of beyond that, 3 different knee injuries, or potentially different this season. Does sort of that accumulation impact the way the team thinks about navigating his career going forward, whether that's workload or style of play or conditioning or anything else?
Yeah, so accurate on one, unrelated, knee issues there. Just getting an off season, at this point, that there's for a young player who has played more and more, like Ja has, just to have an offseason to work on his body, to be able to offload, to be able to hit the ground running. There's no concerns heading into next season about Ja or anyone else. We were having these conversations about Jaren, last year, and Jaren attacked the prior offseason, did everything he could to make sure his body was in a great place, going in. I know Ja's already talking about, doing that this offseason, and, very encouraging what Jaren was able to do from a consistency, being on the court, staying healthy standpoint. I have every reason to believe that, going forward, we'll see the same from Ja.
To Michael, to Megan.
Zach, going back one more time to the free agents. So would you consider Tyus Jones a priority in terms of, bringing him back?
Yeah, both, Tyus, Kyle, Culver, we feel positively, about them. I don't want to speculate on what may or may not happen, specifics of free agency, but, I have a lot of, I feel strongly about what they've all brought to the table and what they potentially could continue to.
Zach, to win Executive of the Year in the NBA, you mentioned about how this is an organizational award. Can you just speak on what, as a group, the staff, the coaching staff, your front office, what this award kind of means to the organization?
Yeah, I mean, incredibly, grateful that, to have that recognition, from my peers, but, that is an organizational award. That doesn't happen without, the amazing people that I'm surrounded with. That's front office, that's coaches, that's players. I mean, Taylor, I couldn't have, more confidence in what Taylor's, been able to do with this group, to cultivate with this group, the day-to-day, work and approach that Taylor has. I wouldn't want to be doing this, with anyone else, with the front office. I mean, with, Tayshaun, Rich Cho, well-established, have been a GM. Tayshaun could have been yesterday. If he wants to be, he will be at any point. Chris Macris, I don't think people, quite know enough about Chris yet. I mean, Chris has been overseeing our scouting group, since day one of this, kind of front office. He's done a fantastic job. He's a rising star, and I would be shocked if he's not on, doing a great job as a GM, somewhere probably in the not too distant, future too. So I'm surrounded by tremendous people, but at the end of the day, like we're all focused on one thing, and that's winning a championship. And you're not going to see me, you're not going to see anyone celebrate anything until we get to that point.
We'll go Mark and Samaria.
Zach, Brandon Clark is also eligible for an extension this offseason. I guess, how would you evaluate, he had a bounce back year, how would you evaluate, I guess, where he fits into this franchise's plans long term?
Yeah, I think Brandon had a great year. I think he and the coaches were really able to just focus on what Brandon's, good at and really kind of lean into those elements of his game, really not, don't lose sleep over, things that, any of the rest of it, any of the noise. A lot of, ton of credit to what Brandon's been able to do there. Had a heck of a first-round series, I thought, against Minnesota. Some to learn, from the last series, but we're in a great place with Brandon. I think he fits really well with a lot of what we want to do. We'll see, where everything else, goes, but I feel great about Brandon coming out of the season.
We'll go Samaria, Drew, then Jeff.
Hey, Zach, right here. All season, the team has just talked about how close they are. We can see it. It's so crazy to see the closeness on the court and off the court. How does that make you feel as a general manager? Because you kind of helped put this group together.
Yeah, I mean, I would give so much credit to Taylor there, too. The approach that he takes with the guys, the confidence, that he instills, in this group. But we've really tried to, load up on guys who, that the care factor is incredibly high. They really, look out for each other. They play for each other. They buy into the notion that, if you focus on the team, the individual stuff takes care of itself. And, I think when I talk about kind of the proof of concept at this point of maybe our way of operating, I'm just encouraged that our guys have so deeply kind of bought into that notion, and they're enjoying it. I enjoy coming to work every day. Everyone here enjoys, what we're really continuing, we keep our foot on the gas with what we're doing, but we're enjoying, working through all this together.
I have time for 3 more. We'll go Drew, Jeff, Evan.
The team you just played, they're a core that's been together for a long time. And when the series was over, they talked about Memphis trying to maintain its core. Is that something you hope to do? And how important is financial flexibility in keeping that when, next summer Dez will be eligible for an extension and so on. How important is it to maintain that flexibility so that you can do that?
Definitely a lot to be said, about core continuity. We're not going to have any issue paying anyone who we want to pay. There's never going to be any issue with retention here. Very grateful and wouldn't be, in the spot doing any of this without, Robert's vision and support and certainly his commitment, on that end there. Not worried about small market notions or any of this or that. We're not going to have any issue whatsoever keeping together whoever we ultimately decide, along the way as we continue to prioritize continuity, I think in large part with this group.
Jeff?
You've talked about how success isn't a straight line, but for you it has been a straight line. What's it going to feel like? Are you prepared for the ups and downs of this going forward? And then secondly, you talk about maximizing the window. How do you view that window now? Like, what is that window?
It's a funny note. I was actually thinking about that the other day. I mean, I do remember saying that, the path is not always linear, and to go from, making a makeshift play-in and not making the playoffs to making an actual play-in and making the playoffs but losing in the first round to being an actual playoff team, winning a series and then losing in the second round. Yes, that is oddly linear, to state the obvious. Indeed. It's not going to always be linear, and that's not from what we might do from a team building standpoint necessarily. The results are not always going to be linear. It's bizarre in a way, but great, in that we can kind of see that incremental progress. I hope we can, the goal of course is to continue to build on where we are. I'd be shocked if it is in fact directly linear, over the next whatever years. There's always going to be at that level, of basketball, certainly in the playoffs. There's a lot of great teams in this league. We're going to put ourselves in the best possible position to, be able to compete at that level. I'm confident we'll be able to, but I wouldn't expect it necessarily to always be. And we just need to be, I think, because of the experience that we've gained from getting to and losing, in these situations, how you cope with challenging situations, like when something nonlinear happens, I'd like to think that we have the foundation in place to navigate whatever, we may need to navigate. But I would continue to still not expect it to be, linear if it turns out to be great. But what was, if I could ask you to repeat the second question?
Maximizing the window.
Yeah.
Do you view the window now?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the window's open. I think we want to be intentional about capitalizing on, what is an incredibly competitive group. We had the second best record, in the NBA this season. We made it to the second round of the playoffs. We won our first playoff series. We're still incredibly young. I think we're the youngest team to make the playoffs in 10 or so years. I don't know the exact, number of what that is, but I think it's something, to that effect. And, I think it doesn't change from a decision-making standpoint. If we want to continue to build in an organic way where we're maximizing, what we think is a real potential, you never know, there's nothing given, but a potentially, good competitive window now because of how young the group is. But, you only get so many chances in theory, and never know how things, might play out. So we're going to do whatever we can to maximize our chance, to win while, doing it within our approach.
Last question, Evan.
Kind of on that note, Zach, you obviously know from experience that a rebuild can be a little bit easier than, say, sustaining that rebuild. So at this point now, obviously with Jaren on contract 2, job extension coming up, how challenging is it going to be to try to, keep that competitive window? Obviously mentioning what everyone said with guys coming up for extensions, with obviously the West being competitive. How challenging is it going to be now with those decisions to make, knowing that obviously, as you just said, anything can happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way, we have such a great foundation of young talent, that we have, real reason to be competitive, for a long window. But like, we just can't lose sight of that. We can't take anything for granted. All of the little things that we've been able to do from, finding two-ways, who have become rotation players and things to that effect. Like, we're going to continue to work incredibly hard to keep doing those things. Everything matters. The big matters, the small matters. we're of course not going to lose sight of where we are and try to, maximize what is, we believe to be a window of contention, but at the same time, like we're not going to lose sight of what got us here. We're going to keep working. We're going to keep, doing things in a way that we believe in, and we're going to try to, at the end of the day, just do everything to put ourselves in a position to capitalize on it.
Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.